Good evening, everybody. I know it's pretty late for me to be hopping on tonight, but I do have a very, very special talk with my girl Shauna, who is an intimacy coach, who I am waiting on to go ahead and join me. So I'm just going to give it a few minutes to see when she will go ahead and join me. Other than that, I hope that everybody has had an amazing week. This week has been pretty exhausting for me, actually. I'm still recovering from the training that I did last Sunday, the Refill, Refine, and Rediscover You training, where I help women to refill their lives with joy and purpose and peace. And I help them to refine their mindset about what it means to love and what it means to be loved. And then I help them to rediscover who they are as women. So the training was so amazing with the women that I had joining. But like I said, I am just going to get some rest, and wait for Shauna to join me tonight. Hi, Pretty Motivates. Thank you. Thank you for joining tonight. I'm waiting on my guest to join us. I hope that you have had an amazing week. This week has been pretty exhausting for me, but I hope your week has been good. All right, looks like she's here. And welcome to everybody who's joining. Hi,
Hi.
Shauna.
Hey,
How
how's
are you?
everybody tonight?
How are you?
I'm doing well, trying to stay cool this evening. A hot Atlanta.
Yeah, it is pretty hot. It's so hot.
Yeah, yes, it is.
Even as late as it is, and anybody who joins us now, they are some pretty night hawks because this is the latest that I've been on.
Yeah, I have to apologize for that because I thought I put 9 o'clock. It was just till today I realized it said 10 o'clock. So
That's
my
okay.
apologies. But we'll see what happens. It's Friday night. Hey,
Yeah,
we can't
yeah,
go anywhere.
yeah. So some folks may be up. Yeah. So before we dig in, I want you to go ahead and introduce yourself to the people who are joining us and to the people who will watch this later.
Mhm. Well, I'm Shauna K, and you can usually find me on Instagram or Facebook or any of my social media sites at Shauna K LLC, which simply stands for Shauna K Love Life Coach. I'm a sexologist and relationship coach. So my areas of expertise mainly though is dealing with intimacy, and mainly those areas fall within infidelity, divorce recovery, or just women over their 40s or 50s that's having a problem with having an orgasm or just trying to stay sexually stimulated.
Cool, cool, cool. So tonight's conversation should be very interesting.
Yeah.
Um but yeah, so to anybody who has never been part of my lives or who is new to me, my name is Bree Gordon. I am author of Black Coffee from peace to overflowing with peace, healing, and purpose, and from empty to overflowing with peace, healing, and purpose. Sorry. And I am also just a woman who decided to use my story to inspire, encourage, enlighten, and educate women about the differences between loving and dysfunctional relationships. So tonight we're going to go ahead and get started with talking about sleeping with the enemy,
Yeah.
toxic relationships built on great sex and great lies. So I will let you go ahead and kick it off, Shauna, with whatever questions or thought process that you had when it came to great sex and toxic relationships.
Well, one of the things I was thinking when I thought of the title is because so many of us as women, and I think you and I, Bree, that's one of the ways we connect,
Mm-hmm.
basically coming from both a toxic relationship, a
Mm-hmm.
toxic marriage, and
Mm-hmm.
we both experienced that. And when I say toxic, we're not just talking about the everyday woman that, may come out and look like they have a black eye or they're beaten down every day. Toxic can be in so many different ways,
Right.
especially in the sex. It can start pretty much when you're dating on that first date. You can
Right.
know and pretty much recognize when you're dating going to be in a toxic relationship because let's say, for example, a person who likes to manipulate sex or the sexual abuser,
Mm-hmm.
the first thing off their mind is talking about sex and intimacy. And they're going to wine you and dine you and everything and make you feel good. It's your first date. But the
Mm-hmm.
next thing, their whole ultimate goal is trying to get you to forcefully have sex with them or to have some type of sexual practice, even if it's oral sex or vaginal stimulation. It's something to do against your will that
Mm-hmm.
they can use that can be pretty much a clear sign in the beginning of a relationship that that's going to be a toxic relationship. However, we overlook those signs and we end up getting married because say if we did go ahead and have sex with that person, it's great sex, and after a couple of months you're dating and everything is going so fairly well.
Mm-hmm.
There's no obvious signs, like I said, of that person being toxic, but then next thing you know, you're headed down the aisle to get married and
Mm-hmm.
you're in this relationship and then some men think once you get married, and I shouldn't just say men, this can be even also if your partner is a female of the same sex, anything in your sexual partner, they can take that, and if they really are a person who like to manipulate sex to get what they want, you can find yourself in a toxic relationship.
Mm. So let me ask you this. So, do you think that people, because I don't want to say, men, I'll say people, so it could be a man or a woman. Do you think that they use sex to gain control and power over other people?
Oh, most definitely, yes. That's their MO. They're going to use that to basically to gain the power. That's what
Mm,
it may not look like someone, say for example, they can start by making you feel bad by not
mm-hmm,
wanting to have sex. I don't know if you ever dated a guy, maybe let's go back to high school.
mm-hmm,
When they would say in our college days, you could
mm-hmm,
have dated a guy and you were going to date, you're not, you're not wanting to have sex, but he may make a comment, something like, well, such and such, she had sex with me on the first date,
right.
and she didn't have a problem doing it. That's common for us to do, just to do some way to make you feel bad, so
Mm.
they can manipulate you into having sex against your will.
Wow, that's very, very interesting.
And
So, go ahead.
I was going to say that also happens carry on into the marriage. I don't know about you. I experienced that myself in my marriage. I think sometime, uh, I think my husband had the ideal because he was married to me
Mm-hmm,
that he owned me and he, when he wanted to have sex, anything go. And it can be even in the midst of being women you have being hit or beat, sometimes that's a way a guy gets stimulated. They want to immediately, after they hit on you or abuse you, they immediately want to go and have sex with you, like makeup sex. And that, and
oh,
then we end up, and that's what I mean by great sex and lies. We end up mistaking that, thinking that's a sign of love. Oh, he must really love me because now he's wanting to have sex with me, make love to me, and tell me he's sorry. No, that's still abuse, and it's
mm.
toxic.
That is
Mm-hmm.
a very deep point.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Pretty Motivate said sex bullying. Yes, I can definitely see that as a form of bullying and manipulation. And now that you say this whole like makeup sex thing, I think of it in a whole nother perspective now.
Mm-hmm.
Like, is
Mm-hmm.
it really makeup sex or is it, like you said, a way that you get off because you have gained power and control over me and now you want to, I don't know, celebrate in a sense, you know?
Yeah, some guys it's their way, their sexual fantasy, like almost like bondage. hit on you, smack on you, or whatever. That's there. Some of them, there's how as perverted as it may sound, they get off on that and they get stimulated. Even if they did look at it as make up sex, it's
Mhm.
still not a way, especially if it's not something that you feel good about, that you're going to feel good about the relationship standing in something like that. So that's still pretty toxic.
Yeah. And so like I remember earlier, well, when me and you had a conversation, we were saying how, in many, cases and situations where um like I could say in my previous marriage where I wouldn't hear from my ex-husband all day, and then when he got home he wanted to be intimate and be physical and all of this stuff, and I'm like, no, like with
Hmm.
marriage, foreplay starts before we even what I'm saying, get to the bed. It obviously starts
Right.
with you stimulating my mind throughout the day, seeing how I'm doing, making certain that I'm okay as a human, making certain that my emotional needs
Yeah.
are um taken care of, as my partner. So do you feel like that's kind of a form of manipulation or maybe neglect? Like you not even talking to me all day, but you expecting me to drop the draws, if I
Well,
may say that, when I get
that's what I
home.
call. Well, that's what I call the emotionally unavailable man. He's
Okay.
really basically emotionally unavailable. He's just there for his needs. He's
Yeah.
not trying to be there to meet your needs. He's really emotionally unavailable. He's not there to communicate. It's all about him and his needs and want. And by you being his wife, he fails to neglect to, communicate with you or to make you feel special. It's all about him. And so to me, he's basically, it's all in for himself.
Right. So let me ask you this question too. So you know
Hmm.
how like there are songs or memes with, being in these toxic relationships, we get caught up because, the sex is good, right?
Right.
So do you think that the male consciously knows that he putting it down, or is this like something that is coincidental? Like, do you think that he knows that he's keeping you in this loop of dysfunction by providing that good sex?
Well, I will say like this, abuse is learned. It's a behavior.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a behavior that men somehow he picked it up and he somehow maybe during his early dating years, he felt like this really works. Maybe he tried it with his first girlfriend, or he could have learned it from his uncles or his fathers. Maybe he's seen this, how his father treated his girlfriends or wives or whatever it
Mm-hmm.
may be. So it's a learned behavior. So
Mm-hmm.
at that point, as whoever he was dating was accepting of that behavior. And like I said, it's all part of that manipulation. He was able to gain what he wanted by treating women that way. Like
Mm-hmm.
you see it all the time. Once an abuser, they say always an abuser. Um, a lot of times when a woman leaves that abuser, he don't change his ways. He goes on and abuse the next woman,
Right.
and she gets involved. But until she puts an end to it, that's how it ends. But
Right.
it's basically if they're, I think guys mainly once you get a certain age,
Mm-hmm.
it's hard to change you.
Mm-hmm.
They gotta they learned that behavior and kept with it so long. You have to be really wanting to change. And I'm not saying that you can't change.
Mm-hmm.
A person that's abused, an abuser can change. We've seen
Mm-hmm.
that happen so many times. People save their marriage. Either they have a come to Jesus moment and get saved, and the Lord saves them. But it has to be something that it's almost like an alcoholic or dealing with drugs
Mm-hmm.
abuse. It's a behavior you have to put in the practice and you have to put in the work for it. But unless we as women speak up in our marriage, in our relationship, and let them know that that's not a way you want to be treated in the bedroom or at home, it's basically falling. They're not going to know that unless you communicate that to them.
Right. So mommy's got me. Hi, Nicole. She said our bodies tell them. I can agree with that.
Hmm.
So with them
Hmm.
knowing, with them doing specific stuff and getting a, certain response or reaction, I feel like yes, they will be able to tell like, hey, this is what she likes or this is what, she doesn't like. So yeah, I'll have to agree with Nicole, and you as well when it comes to that.
Well, I will say this: when she say our body response, or is she talking about in the bedroom, or was it Nicole who asked the question? Is she
Well,
talking about this?
Her name is Nicole. So
Oh,
she
okay.
was basically saying, like, when a guy who, has great sex and he's toxic, she's saying that based on how he respond how our bodies respond to him giving good sex, although the relationship is toxic. That's what I got from that.
Okay. Well, I will say I'm gonna kind of binge off and go a little bit different.
Mm-hmm.
Um, a lot of times you can be sexually abused
Mm-hmm.
and you can also be raped and you can still have stimulation and you can still orgasm. You can
Mm-hmm.
still, even a rape person, and that's where men get it wrong. They think because, say, if you're in an abusive relationship and he's sexually abusing you, and I'm going to say, I have to say, it's even child abuse.
Mm-hmm.
A 13-year-old girl, she will still have an orgasm and she's still going to have all those things. It doesn't mean that she wanted it. It's just natural for the body to respond. It's just like if someone tickles you and say
Yeah.
they start tickling your feet, you can't help but to laugh or
Right.
you can't control that. And that's what I have to explain to when I coach sexual victims who have been abused,
Mm-hmm.
especially young girl. I am speaking to a young girl and she felt her and her mom they had a difficulty thinking that it was something that she did wrong because she had a stimulation, she had an
Yeah.
orgasm.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean you're still going to have, and I think that's what we have to, um, for guys to learn, just
Mm-hmm.
because our body have an orgasm or we may feel stimulated or aroused does not mean that we like for that to happen to us.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Gotcha.
Hmm.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Yeah. So would you say that people who are, in these toxic relationships based on, great sex or whatnot, do you think that they're aware that the relationship is toxic?
I'm going to speak from my most women, and then you can chime in from myself. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't recognize my relationship was toxic.
Okay.
I knew that because I didn't really know that it was
Right.
toxic. I didn't know if it. I knew it was something wasn't something I felt good about in, and just I wasn't really aware that the little things that he were doing that was really toxic.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of times we get mixed signals. Like we're saying, when a guy can come back and they'll, say if a guy who's having numerous affairs
Mm-hmm.
and he'll come back and say, it's just a one thing, she didn't mean anything to me, but I love you. You're my wife. And those type of things right there make us feel like, oh, wow, he really does love me.
Right.
He's saying he didn't want her. We're not forgetting the fact that he went out and had an affair and it with a different woman. We're
Right.
excusing his behavior.
Right.
Um, so I think, and we don't realize that that's toxic. Now, guys can have an affair, women can have an affair, and we can do that and we can be forgiven and move on and not do it again. But
Right.
I'm talking about the repeat offenders when you find out you're
Right.
like myself. When I was married, my husband was having 5 or 6 affairs,
Right.
and um, at one point I stayed in that
Right.
relationship. Not only was it very dangerous to me with all the STDs and everything else, but I stayed in that marriage because I believed all his BS,
Right.
all his lies, and thinking he was going to change, and thinking the counseling. You go to the point where you go to the counseling, you get counseling, and you're thinking, oh, he's participating in the counseling, he's going to change.
Right.
But I should have known the warning signs because after we would come from counseling, he would still, like, I think one of the counseling sessions was when I called him on his cell phone, you're supposed to be available to answer.
Right.
Well, he still refused to answer his cell phone. And he told us at counseling, I'm not going to answer my cell phone when she calls, I'm not going to be controlled like that. Just those are the warning signs, and still me not realizing that relationship was toxic.
Yeah. So yeah, for me, I would say that initially I did not know that I was in a toxic relationship. So I
Hmm.
thought that it was normal to, stay no matter what. I thought that, I had to basically um put my needs last. I thought that, I had to put my children's, mental and emotional health, I guess, above mind in order to keep the family together, right? Because as
Hmm.
and as a mom, I think that keeping the family together is something that's often held over our head. So I did not know that the relationship I was involved in was toxic. And so Patrina said some of them have really sweet mouths. They will talk. They will talk your sweet panties off. I will have to
Yeah,
agree to that.
I agree with that.
So
Mhm.
so have you ever experienced maybe a client? Tiffany said many are narcissists that try and train. Yes, they do. Ooh, yes, yes, girl. I can
What did
relate.
she say?
She said
What did
many
you
are
say, Tiff?
narcissists. She said many are narcissists that try to train you in to stay. That's true.
Oh, yeah. Hmm.
I feel like, they try and gain a sense of control over you through, of course, the great sex. And I don't know like how many people actually believe that, sex is beyond physical, but I am a firm believer that it is beyond physical. I ain't gonna,
Hmm.
get to preaching about, all of the different elements of it, but I do believe that it is beyond a physical experience with the other person. So by them, imposing themselves or, continuously having sex and making it great,
Hmm.
or not, that allows them to have a sense of control over you. Do you think that there are cases where um, men will continue to impregnate their women to keep them, like maintain control over them with having kids?
Yeah, I do believe that. I mean, of course, you have women, it's vice versa, that will
Yeah,
get pregnant just
yeah,
to maintain control. So that works
yes.
both ways to maintain that control. We see it all a lot most of the time with famous basketball stars, or I mean, people in status where women will get impregnate just to keep control over that guy and keep from living. So yeah, I do believe men will also do that to gain control over their women, and also to keep her humble and to keep her tied down with kids. It could be 4 or 5 kids, so she can stay in the home. um, I also wanted to say something when you were saying about the different forms of sex behaviors, is that can also start, even when we talk about the Me Too movement.
Mm-hmm,
It's about unwanted touching.
mm-hmm,
When you go on, we have to come, even in a marriage, when you get married, we have to know that sexual abuse happens so much in a marriage. I think even more so than when you're dating. I just think it's accepted because women seems to think when you're married, well, that's my husband, let me please him.
mm-hmm,
But no means no.
mm-hmm,
So say if you're married, men will try, say, anal sex.
mm-hmm.
If you say no, that's no. So if your husband and you're sleeping in bed and he penetrates you and force you into anal sex, that is basically a marital rape. That's still rape.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to just, as women, we have to know how to communicate this, even when we're married or when in a dating relationship. We need to be open about what we like and what we don't like. You
So,
know,
so
to
let me
me,
ask. Can I cut you off really quickly to ask
yeah.
you to explain? And Katrina, I see all your yeses. I
Mm.
what are some of the red flags that you would say um with someone who may be like a boundary pusher or who may not respect sexual boundaries? Like, do you think that like on a first date they'll be one to, I don't know, talk about sex, or do you think on a first date they'll be one to touch you inappropriately? Like, what are some red flags for someone who may push your boundaries or, not respect your sexual boundaries?
Well, it's all above what you're saying. They're going to touch you. They're going to see what they can get away with. They're going to
Yeah.
touch you in certain ways. Um, and they're going to wait for you to see where you're going to say no. Okay, that's
Mm-hmm.
where the communication come. And for women, when we talk about the Me Too movement, of us being clear, not smiling. When we say no, no is no. We're not going to give them like a half-ass yes, and then and tell them no and be smiling at the same time. No, you have to be clear and let them know that you don't appreciate them touching on your butt, rubbing you on your breast. Those are the type of things you have to be clear.
Mm-hmm.
I think when someone's trying to push your boundaries,
Mm-hmm.
they're going to keep setting you up.
Mm.
to see how far they can go. Like
Right.
you got to admit, a person who push boundaries they're also a manipulator.
Right.
They're going to see how they can do to, like I say, reverse the tables, to see what they can do to really make you feel stimulated or touching you or even talk about things. Sometimes it may even be in the conversation, telling you all the good things you want to hear,
Mm-hmm.
telling you, he probably learned. You have to realize a guy, most guys that are manipulators or boundary pushers, whatever you're going to call, they strategize.
Mm-hmm.
They know what to say.
Mm-hmm.
They may have a conversation with you. Say, for example, Bree, if they're going out on a date with you, they're going to find out that you really love having a family. They're going to find out that you talk about having kids or wanting to be married or about your career or building your business. So
Mm-hmm.
they're going to have that conversation. They're going to talk to you about everything that you love, and it's going to be about, say, for example, um, about your business and about your being a mom. So
Mm-hmm.
they're going to push that conversation so you can start trusting them. That's how they start to build up the trust.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the trust only so they can come in and um,
Break it.
break that trust.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Well,
they're
not.
basically trying to get you to feed into what they're saying.
Yes. Yes. So they build you up to, like you said, to get your trust built up, but basically to come in and break down your self-esteem, right? To
Right.
pick apart at your sense of self-worth. So
Hmm.
yeah. So I would definitely agree with that. So have you ever had any woman who was unaware that she was maybe in a toxic relationship, but she said, I'm finding it hard to get stimulated when it's time to have sex with my husband? Do you encounter that often, or do you sit down and kind
Yeah, with my friends. I'm laughing because I'm thinking, yeah, some of my friends that's on the phone. Yeah, look at this conversation. No, no, I've encountered myself personally, but yeah, I think as women we've all have some type of. I mean, I even display some toxic part. I used to be the type person that I was very clingy in my
right,
relationships
right, me
because
too,
I was so hurt. I was clingy, and you get those clinginess because of being an abused person. So you feel like you want to feel need or love. So
right,
I think, toxic relationships is not, I know we use it as bad, but it can be a lesson too,
for
that you
sure,
can, something that you can overcome.
for
But yeah,
sure.
I do encounter a lot of women, would you ask me, that's in toxic relationships?
Hmm.
Is
No,
that what you were asking me?
I'm saying like women who may not be aware of being in a toxic relationship and come to you and say, "Hey, Shauna, I'm having
Mm.
a problem, getting sexually stimulated with my husband. So how can you help me?" You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, actually, I have had a client like that, and what we realize is that, try not to say too much, but what I realize is that, say for example, that the person, she was in a toxic relationship and she didn't realize it,
Hmm.
and it's because that her husband um, was very sexually aggressive,
Hmm.
okay, and doing things and wanting her to do things that she didn't feel like she wanted to participate in,
Right.
and when you have that in, say, when you're outside the home and your husband's coming home and you worked all day, or you come home, you don't really want to have sex or anything else, and you definitely don't want to be having sometime anal sex, you
Hmm.
know. So those are all things that the person didn't realize, but she
Yeah.
realized now that it was a form of that. It wasn't her, but his behavior was toxic because he was trying to satisfy his sexual fantasies, not having any regards for her and her feelings and how she felt. So it was very, like I said, unwanted sex.
Gotcha. So I think
Mhm.
like I think as women, and as I talk to more and more women, I think that what I'm coming to find is that so many of us have not really been taught how to set boundaries, right?
Mhm.
So, because we haven't been taught how to set boundaries, a lot of times we don't know how to communicate our boundaries because, again, we haven't been
Mhm.
taught how to set them. We haven't been
Mhm.
taught the need to set them, and we haven't necessarily been taught that it's okay, to say no. A lot of us feel obligated or feel like, if I say no to this, then he won't like me, as much, and all of these things. And I think it's important for us to learn the importance of being able to set boundaries as women, as men in general,
Mhm.
because when it comes, so when it comes to just setting, there are different types of boundaries, right? So they are
Mhm.
emotional boundaries, there are spiritual boundaries, there are financial boundaries, and then there are the
Right.
physical ones. So I feel like because we just don't know how to set them, period, when it comes to each section of boundary setting, it becomes very hard for us to do that, and we don't
Mhm.
realize that sometimes when we're in a position where we're being manipulated or abused or neglected, like we think that it's normal, it's normalized because we weren't taught the proper way of
Mhm.
doing it in the first place.
Mhm.
So I think that that's like a conversation that, like, boundary setting is something that we all kind of need this course
Yeah.
in to talk about the importance of, because I think when your
Mhm.
boundary is crossed, you feel something in your gut, right? So when someone crosses a boundary, whether it's emotional, whether it's physical, whether it's spiritual or financial, there's some, you get like this gut feeling. I can't really explain it, but I've had it several times. Like, damn,
Mhm.
that didn't really sit right with me. Um,
Mhm.
and so when that did happen to me, I didn't say anything. So
Mhm.
I think that again, it's important for us to learn how to communicate our boundaries.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's one of the things I always on my coaching session, that's part of our plan, is the communication. Communication is so much, it's very key. Even when it comes to your dating, in your marriage, the communication is everything. You start by setting those boundaries by, say, since we're talking about intimacy,
Mm-hmm.
um, it's okay as a wife or as a husband for you to communicate to each other your likes and your dislikes.
Mm-hmm.
Say to me, I may not like, say, for example, for my nipples to be kissed or,
Mm-hmm.
or to be touched in certain ways.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of the things that you want to communicate to your partner.
Mm-hmm.
You want to say it in the positive reinforcement. Hey, I like it when you do this, when you touch me here, when you give me nice back massage,
Mm-hmm.
but this is something I would like a little bit of less of and a little bit of more of. So it's very key that you communicate that to your sexual part, your intimacy partner.
That's good. That's good. So,
Hmm.
what about this is gonna
Hmm.
sound we on here late.
I'm glad we just decided to do this live kind of late too.
Me too. Hold up, I messed up my screen. All right, so we on here late. So
Because we can, talking about intimacy.
yes, exactly. Okay, so since you're an intimacy coach, right? This is kind of all
Hmm.
key when it comes to toxic. But do you coach women who are afraid to say that they're not satisfied? Like, do you tell them how to tell their partner, like, so they won't have to say nothing, something like, I don't know. I mean, I don't really think a person's gonna say like you suck, but I'm just
Yeah.
saying, like, do you
Well,
tell them, do you coach them how to just,
yes.
what I'm saying, communicate that?
Yeah, because you always get the guy. I always think about this show. Remember the show, Waiting to Exhale? Was it? What was her name? When she was with the guy and she was making all the sounds like he was doing, like he was really doing something.
Yes.
Most guys they like to, they're like everything, like they're going for, like they're like they have this big ego. So we have to be careful how we communicate that to them
Yes.
because it could be. I mean, that's like their everything, their manhood.
Exactly.
So
And
we
that
we
and
don't want
that
to
could
crush.
yes, and that
But if
could be
you really
devastating.
want to make a guy feel really bad and you really want to really just let him have it for him treating you bad, tell him how horrible he is in bed. That will crush his ego.
And that could be devastating too, right? That could be extremely
Right.
devastating.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's what I'm saying. So you help, women and men communicate those types of
Hmm.
things to their partner.
Yeah, mainly for women, just how to have that positive conversation to let the partner know because there's, like I said, there's some men, um, even so many women have, I would say about, I think the last study, out of the 10 women,
Hmm.
probably out of those 10 women, only three women had a true orgasm, a G
Wow.
spot orgasm. And
Wow.
that's because most men do not know how to really give a woman an orgasm, because if they're using their penis, which is not shaped, and I'm like, we're on this lake, but they always say they got to have that special hook on their penis. You ever see that curve? That's,
Right.
but if a man is using his fingers to stimulate you, most of the time that's an experienced man, and he knows where your G spot is. So he
Gotcha.
knows then how to give you a G spot orgasm. Whereas some men may not know that. They may have never been taught, or they don't know where the woman's G spot is located at. So, it's little certain things when we do the coaching calls, when I'm on we husband and wife, I will talk to the wife
Hmm.
just so and give hints to the husband, because the wife had already explained to me what was going on and what she needed more of and less of. But I'll give those little hints, so hopefully that he's taking notes, and that he will know how to stimulate his wife.
Gotcha. Hmm.
Hmm.
That's interesting.
Hmm.
So, I know we said we weren't going to be on here super long.
Hmm.
Were there any other like points you wanted to touch on when it came to talking about toxic relationships and great
Hmm.
sex? Like any um key points or any like similarities that you find or anything that you just find in general when it comes to that, when it comes to toxic relationships and great sex?
Yeah. Well, I just want to say basically, a toxic relationship doesn't have, like I said, have to look like a woman abused. Mainly time she's
Right.
your corporate woman. She's looking very fresh. She's made up very well, looks very well. But as women and as sisters to each other, we have to be aware of, and look for signs of that. Because sometimes everyone's not okay.
Hmm.
And also, you can have what we call, it's called a sexual abuse partner. Like I said, abuse can happen in the bedroom more often than it do outside the home.
Hmm.
And it starts in, I just want women to know, anytime they're being forced, even if you're married, to do something that's not pleasing that you want to do, that is sexual abuse.
Right.
Okay. And there is help for it, and it's having those conversations and everything with your partner. So if maybe your partner may not be abusive, but he may be doing things in the bedroom that you pretty much don't like, and you and it's a lot of time, pain. Sometimes at a certain age, as you get older, and as women, sometimes having sex can be very painful for us,
Hmm.
and we're afraid to let our partner know that it's painful.
Hmm.
But we have to have that conversation,
Hmm.
because it can get you in a lot of trouble and have you in the emergency room and having long-term problems afterwards, especially if you have a husband that's very blessed in certain areas, and just and you're having certain positions, and
Hmm.
it's really not comfortable for you, and it's not good to your body.
Yeah.
So those things, and like I said, can really do damage to you and have a long-term effect. So we have to be comfortable with having those conversations and talking to our partners about what we like and what we don't like, and what feels good and what don't feel good.
Yeah.
And when we say no, we really have to say, even in dating, and we have to teach our young daughters these two when they start dating, that no is no.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm,
I agree.
mm,
I agree.
mm,
And I mean there are times when men, are, experience unwanted, sex um
mhm.
as well. So I don't want to seem,
Yeah,
completely
yeah, that is true. That is, I
um
mean, you make a good point, especially these days. Yeah, there's a lot. You're exactly right. And even you having a young son,
mhm.
we have to teach, because it, I mean, it's starting so young in the school. You just see, I mean, I don't, you know, even in high school, grade schools, kids are really learning, and with everything on TV, we have to really just educate our sons and daughters
Yes.
about this. We can't keep it hush hush anymore and make it a taboo subject
Yes.
because that doesn't give any results. We need to really talk about it and have the open conversations to our kids about it.
Yes. I agree. I definitely agree.
hmm
Um, yeah. So
hmm
did you have anything else that you wanted to say or tell the people how they can find you? And because I think when we initially got on, it wasn't that many people on, so they didn't really have the
hmm
opportunity to hear from you.
Yeah, they can find me anywhere on from it's very easy. Shauna K LLC is my Facebook page. My website is Shauna K Love Life Coach. You can go there, and you can also, if you go to my page, there's also a contact form on my website where you can do free discovery calls. Those discovery calls are like about 30 minutes free where I talk to you and get to know you and see what your problems are and just discovery calls. So those are some of the ways that you can contact me.
Cool. So we do have a question here. It says, "What do you say to
hmm
the kids when their dad is brainwashing them?" Ooh, um, brainwash.
Brainwashing how.
Yeah, brainwashing them about what would be my question, Ingrid. And hi, hey everybody who joined. Thank y'all for joining. So
Yes, thank you so much.
so okay. While we're waiting on her, why don't you tell them like exactly what you do? Because we know like where we can find you, but just tell them like
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I forgot. Yeah, because there's only like two people when we got on earlier. So when I am an intimacy coach and a relationship coach, I'm a certified sexologist. My specialty is in dealing with people who are married or even dating, mainly women over 40s that have a problem with intimacy in their marriage, even dealing with infidelity. I'm sorry, I keep saying intimacy. Someone who may have had a husband or a spouse that has been unfaithful in that marriage. So I deal with anything along the intimacy.
gotcha, gotcha. So while we're talking about that question, right? So do you deal with sex addicts or no?
Yes. I have what I do, I coach. Okay, so I am not a counselor. So
Mm-hmm.
I do have people when they come to my page, I refer them out for help that's like counselors and when I say coach, I'm like that person. I'm like your accountability. You were
Yes,
talking yesterday, accountability partner. So
yes.
I give you some steps that you can use. And like for added, say I had last year I had a guy that was into he wanted his wife to watch porn movies and she just wasn't into it and just trying to get it. So we put together a plan to
Mm-hmm.
help him overcome that, some alternatives.
Mm-hmm.
But if there's some way that even if someone's feeling very depressed or suicidal, I refer them to the suicidal hotline.
Mm-hmm.
Or if they're experiencing domestic violence, like I was going to say tonight, if there's anyone on this call and they are experiencing domestic violence, just make sure you call the domestic violence hotline, which is that 1-800, I think, what is it? 1-800-799-7233 to make sure you get help because, or call, 911. And if you can't, a lot of times when you're in an abusive relationship, you can't make those phone calls. Because I was in a very abusive relationship, I could not make a call a lot
Mm-hmm.
of times. When my husband would would just be kicking me and doing everything, and he would take the phones. This is when we had the phones in the walls where you had the phones in the home and he would pull them from the wall and I couldn't make that call.
Mm-hmm.
But nowadays, if you can't make the call, make sure you at least reach out. There's a domestic violence hotline. I think it's hotline.org.
Mm-hmm.
And you can always send them an email or let them know what's going on or anything. But whatever the case, if you feel unsafe, that's when I feel like you need to have an accountability partner. If you are, you need to have someone you can confide in and think of a plan to get
Mm-hmm.
out that marriage. Anyway.